Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy, and in this podcast, I am going to give you all the best streamers and ad options for next week so you can start planning early. Let's get it. All right, welcome in everybody. I do not have a best friend with me here tonight. If you've been following along with Apples and Gino's content, you might know that Blake and Josh hosted a 2 hour plus live stream going over all the trade deadline deals earlier today. And so I thought that Blake probably deserved some time off. So I gave him the night off. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to be seeing things a little bit differently. I've decided that I'm going to show up the show sheet here so that you can follow along visually. I didn't think anybody really just wanted to see my face any bigger on the screen than it already was, and so I figured I could just pop the show sheet up there for your viewing pleasure. I am going to get through some news and notes to kick things off here. I think that is a good place to start. And I do have my own takes, as you might guess, about some of the trade deadline things that have gone on. Let's talk through some injuries and things first. Gabe Vilardi won't play in games this weekend. You got Vlad Nemestikov on line one and Iafallo on power play one. Yeah, explain that one to me. You can't. Thomas Chabot re-aggravated an injury. Didn't play Thursday. The quote I have from Bruce Garriock, the Ottawa Sun, says, Steos says he doesn't expect Thomas Chabot to be out long-term, but doesn't have a complete update yet. So I don't know what that sounds like to you, but that sounds like to me that it's probably not going to be the next game or the game after that, but maybe sometime in a week or so he could potentially return. That's my best guess at the moment. Vince Dunn out with a lower body injury, no timeline on return after taking that hit from Martin Pospisil that Pospisil was suspended for. Obviously, just something to watch. Unfortunate if you got Vince Dunn. Hopefully, he's back for the playoffs when Seattle does have a pretty good schedule. Carolina goaltending situation. Frederik Andersen came back off the IR, and Ronta was put on waivers as a result of that. And Andersen had a nice little start for himself. I mean, it was against Montreal, so take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But only one goal allowed, saw 25 shots. That's a good start for Frederik Andersen coming back in. And it'll be interesting for sure. I've been saying that I don't think Andersen is necessarily a great option, but realistically, it's probably still going to be a tandem. I was expecting, with regards to goal usage is one thing that I don't like to do very often, but my gut take was that Kochetkov would get the kind of 1A and Andersen would fall into 1B. But I mean, if Andersen's going to play well, then there's no reason for him not to get more time. Mason McTavish and Trevor Zegras started practicing this week, and Mason McTavish actually did make his way into the game tonight against Dallas. It didn't go particularly well for the Ducks, but he was there, so that's a good sign. Definitely a good sign for Trevor Zegras that he's on his way back. Hopefully he can come back in the next week here. That'd be awesome to see him back out. That would obviously provide a big boost to some of the other guys, like if you're holding Troy Terry like me in some spots and you're just praying that there's anybody left in Anaheim that can help support some point scoring from Troy Terry. Maybe Zegras can help us out with some of that as well. Gus Forsling signed a big extension, 5.75 mil times 8 years. Yeah, hasn't been necessarily the most fantasy relevant guy this year, although he's had some really strong stretches. He's just kind of one of these guys who's not taking power play time, but he is putting up points because he plays on a good team and he's an excellent defenseman. And as far as a hockey deal goes, I think that's an absolute steal for Florida. I've seen some of the models that try to show what a player is actually worth in salary cap dollars, in real dollars, what they should be worth in terms of their salary, and Forsling shows out really well in all of those. So good signing for the Panthers for sure. Nick Seeler gets a 4-year extension. I think it was Frank Saravelli posted, he's like, I think it was like 10.8 million was the total value here. And that's just, Frank Saravelli called it life-changing money for Nick Seeler, who's been a guy who's been kicking around on literally like league minimum deals, year-to-year deals, and now finds a home, plays well, and gets a big deal. So you love to see that. Tage Thompson out day-to-day with an upper body injury. Hopefully he's not gone long. Hopefully he can come back. I believe Buffalo's got a game here tomorrow, or today rather. I'm recording this at 1 a.m. here on Saturday, so hopefully Tage Thompson is back. It's definitely been a wildly frustrating season for Tage Thompson and Tage Thompson rosters like myself. All right, so let's talk some trade deadline. I'm going to try to keep this super concise, but I did want to get my takes out there since I was unable to join the guys for the trade deadline show. And yeah, I just want to have my takes out there. So Devils get Kakkonen and Allen. So Kaapo Kakkonen and Jake Allen to play goal. I retweeted a tweet here. If you go on Apples and Geno's on the Twitter, you'll see my retweet, but it was basically Devils going from Vanacek Schmid tandem to Allen Kakkonen, and it was the meme of the guy who's like got the before and after, but he looks identical in both pictures. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I feel like Jake Allen has a chance to be the best of those 4 goaltenders. But I'm not sure that it will necessarily come to pass. Obviously, the Devils trading away to Foley and some other stuff, they're kind of signaling that they're not looking to contend necessarily for this season anymore. And yeah, that kind of means that it could go south in a bit of a bad way. And so obviously goalies would be super affected by that. But I will say that Jake Allen definitely has the best chance of being a fantasy relevant netminder in New Jersey this season. Thomas Hertl went to Vegas. It sounds like he is going to play in the regular season, like he is going to come back, so it's not just a full cap circumvention move there. So that's interesting. I'm not sure exactly where he's going to slot into the lineup. I would imagine he probably kind of replaces, well, they've kind of moved stuff around, but basically becomes their 2C there. And yeah, just probably gets a decent amount of ice time. What I'll be really interested in is whether he can get some top power play work there in Vegas when he gets there. As far as fantasy implications go, like if he's out there in your league, you can definitely stash him on IR for now. He now has some definite relevance in that regard, but he also just might not get minutes in Vegas as well. They obviously have Jack Eichel as a 1C there, and they don't need Thomas Hertl to be skating 20 plus minutes like he was every night in San Jose. I do think that there's probably a spot available on the top power play, especially if Mark Stone is out until the playoffs proper. So I do think that there's a chance he could slot in there when he does return. So it could be worth a stash for sure. While we're on Vegas, Noah Hannafin, Anthony Mantha go there. In the last game, Mantha was line 2 with Stevenson and Carlson. It's not a terrible spot, but I'm not going to say that Mantha could be anything more really than just a streamer here or there. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets some life out of the trade, but I'm not super excited about that. Noah Hannafin playing second power play and obviously going to play some minutes at even strength, which is what he's done pretty much throughout his career in Calgary so far. But I do think that this is probably overall a slight hit to his fantasy usage. He was getting a fair amount of power play 1 over the last little while. The Flames were obviously trying to showcase him for the trade. But I do think that overall it's probably a little bit of a hit to Noah Hannafin's fantasy value unless, somehow he unseats Shea Theodore as a top power play quarterback. I can't imagine that would happen because I hold Shea Theodore in a pretty high regard, especially in terms of being a power play quarterback. So I think Hannafin takes a slight hit here in overall value. Jason Zucker goes to Nashville. This one's a little bit interesting to me because, yeah, Nashville has been running through a few different options as the 4th player on their top power play. Cody Glass was there in the last game. They've used Colton Sissons there. I mean, maybe Jason Zucker even replaces Gus Nyquist on the top line. I don't think that happens immediately since Nyquist has been doing really well lately there. But if he goes cold at some stretch, would they consider breaking up that line and Zucker getting up there? I have some interest in Zucker, especially if he does take over that top power play role from Cody Glass. It's a really good power play, quite honestly, with those players: Forsberg, O'Reilly, Yossi, Nyquist. Yeah, just veteran guys who know how to get it done. So I'd be kind of interested if Zucker can make himself the final piece of that top power play. Something to watch for sure. Tyler Toffoli going to Winnipeg. So yeah, we can officially trash can Nikolai Ehlers, I think. Um, More seriously, I think Toffoli probably is going to play line one with Connor and Scheifele. Um, I don't know. Velarde's been there. He's been very productive when he's been healthy. So maybe they keep Velarde there. That'll be one to watch for sure. But either way, it obviously makes the Jets much deeper at forward and should raise the stock of the second line at even strength for whatever that's worth. I don't know if it'll be worth a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but like, yeah, if Toffoli joins the second line and plays there with Monahan and Ehlers, that could be really solid for those guys. If he goes to the top line and bumps down Velarde to play with Monahan and Ehlers, that would still be probably a net positive at even strength. But obviously, him being there means that Ehlers is almost never going to see top power play minutes, most likely. So yeah, net negative for Nick Ehlers, in my opinion, even with hopefully a better line mate at even strength than Alex Iafallo. But overall, I think I'd be relatively excited about Tyler Toffoli getting a new chance here. He's had some hot stretches with Jack Hughes in New Jersey, obviously, but has also had some cold stretches. So I think it's a good spot for Toffoli. I don't think my view of him is changing all that much in the grand scheme of things. Kuznetsov and Gensel to Carolina is an interesting one for sure. I'm going to be really interested in how they decide to move these lines around. Aho, Teravainen, and Svechnikov had been the line there for a while. Do they start moving that around? Kuznetsov with Jarvis and Gensel could be a line. It would be interesting anyway, is all I'm saying. We got to see how this shakes out, and especially how they use the top power play. Last game, the top power play was Aho, Kotkaniemi, Svechnikov, Jarvis. Does Kuznetsov take the top power play and they move one of these other guys down? And I have to assume that Jake Gensel is a caliber of player that he's just automatically on top power play. But where they decide to move the other players will definitely have fantasy repercussions, especially for a guy like Seth Jarvis if he gets moved down. Yeah, just a lot of moving parts in Carolina. It's going to be very interesting to see what those lines and power play lines are. In the Gensel deal, obviously Bunting going to Pittsburgh. I do have some interest in Bunting if he gets there with Crosby. We've seen Crosby elevate guys like this throughout his career. And so if Bunting joins the top line and even top power play, then you could definitely see that providing a little bit of a boost there. If it was like a Crosby Raquel Bunting line, that could be pretty interesting for a guy like Bunting. I will say Brian Rust is close to returning. I forgot to mention that in the news and notes off the top, but that'll be interesting, obviously, to see where Rust slots in. Typically, they've used Rust and Raquel with Crosby on the top line when both are healthy throughout the season this year. So do they just default back to that and Bunting goes down to the second line? Something to watch, but I do have interest, obviously, with pretty much anybody who's attached to Crosby, but Bunting in particular, I think, fits the mold there pretty well. Anthony Duclair goes to Tampa Bay, and I know Josh was talking about this. I do like this move as well there. In the last game, they loaded up the top line, Stamkos, Kucherov, Point. I don't think that lasts for any length of time, but Duclair definitely has an opportunity here. If he can solidify the fourth power play slot that they've tried Nick Paul and now Anthony Cirelli in throughout this year, if he can lay claim to that spot, then he could definitely have some pretty significant relevance there. Either way, like Stamkos probably needs another winger, assuming that he eventually gets moved off the top line with Point and Kucherov, which is they've run this like stacked top line at times throughout their last number of seasons, but typically it ends up being Stamkos on the second line again with whoever else is there. And I'd be interested, is all I'm saying. If Duclair and Stamkos get together, I think that could be an interesting pairing. Middlestat to Colorado and Byram to Buffalo. That's a really interesting trade. Center for defenseman. So Middlestat and Colorado first. In the game that was just played, he played line two with Nichushkin and Drouin, and also power play two. Didn't play a ton of minutes. I mean, you don't expect they're going to overwork a guy in his first outing there, but I kind of feel not super excited about it unless he's going to be super consistently in the top six, and he's going to get the elite level Colorado forward treatment that we've seen from on guys like Nichushkin and Drouin and Lehkonen, where they just get like 20 plus minutes, and then Colorado just basically doesn't play their bottom six whatsoever. So if that happens, you could have some interest for sure in Middlestat, but I'm not overall just over the moon. It's definitely a good spot, but he's been in good spots before, and the production has been solid at times, but eventually just kind of run of the mill. I'm just not excited about the player overall. Bowen Byram to Buffalo, I am a little bit more interested in. He had a big debut for Buffalo here, which is kind of interesting. He joined the top pair with Rasmus Dahlin and also joined the top power play, which was very interesting. Skated almost 25 minutes and had a goal and an assist with 3 shots. So, again, not sure how long that lasts. Tage Thompson wasn't playing, so is Byram just the guy replacing him on the top power play there for one game, and then when Thompson comes back, Byram's back off? That's a possibility. So you don't need to you don't need to sell the farm for Bowen Byram or anything, but I definitely have interest. It seemed like for whatever reason Byram was not all there this year. Typically, like what we've seen from him so far in his young career, he was not able to match that this year in Colorado for whatever reason. So maybe what he needs is a change of scenery, and he needs a whole bunch of minutes and needs to get some confidence up. Maybe that happens in Buffalo. I'm definitely open to the possibility, especially if you're a defense needy team and Byram is just 25% rostered at the moment. Definitely somebody that you could be looking at for the purpose. Adam Henrique went to Edmonton, played with RNH on the second line in the first game here. Really, I think you're only going to be super interested in Henrique if there's an injury and so he gets on the top power play, or if he's playing with McDavid or Draisaitl. Basically, what we've been saying about Warren Foegele is what we can say about Adam Henrique, with probably just a little bit more excitement for Adam Henrique, who's shown himself to be a pretty capable goal scorer and point producer throughout his career to this point. So I do think that Henrique is probably going to end up being a little bit overvalued and probably just picked up and held by whoever snaps him up first in your league. That may or may not be the right move. I would still view him more as just like a high-end streamer whenever Edmonton has a good schedule. I will say Edmonton has a great playoff schedule, so if you're all set for playoffs, like you're sitting comfortably in a bye or something like that, and you do need some of those games that Edmonton offers in the playoffs run, then definitely you could just grab Henrique now, stash him, keep him on your lineup, kind of eat the loss for now, but hopefully he's playing with McDavid and Draisaitl come the first week of your playoffs, and then you're loving life. So that's definitely an option as well there. Vlad Tarasenko to Florida. And the first game set up line one and power play two. So line one with Barkov and Reinhart, obviously a good spot to be. We'll see how long that lasts. They have changed up the lines a fair bit throughout the season. Well, I would say they've tinkered more than they've changed up the lines a fair bit. They've typically kept Barkov and Reinhardt together. They've typically kept Bennett and Tkachuk together, and then they've kind of tinkered around with the other pieces throughout there. But either way, it's a good spot for Tarasenko for sure. Kind of honestly similar to the spot he was in Ottawa, except I do think obviously Barkov and Reinhardt are better players, more capable of helping him get some production than the players he was working with in Ottawa. So overall, net positive for Vlad Tarasenko. Probably a hold at this point if you've got him. Yeah, probably above a streamer level for me at this point. All right. So that's my take on the trade deadline. Let's get into the waiver wire situation for week 22. So on Monday in week 22, we have 4 games, Tuesday 10 games, Wednesday 4 games, Thursday 12 games, Friday 2 games, Saturday 14 games, Sunday 7 games. In total, that's 53 games played. It's a pretty normal week in terms of the overall schedule. A little bit more towards the heavy side, but nothing too crazy. We only have one team with the Monday-Tuesday back-to-back, which is pretty interesting. Usually there's a number of teams with a Monday-Tuesday back-to-back to open the week that you can choose from, but it's the New York Rangers. 4 teams with a Monday-Wednesday to open the week, which is a little bit more rare. LA, St. Louis, Washington, and Winnipeg all start their week that way with the 2 off nights. 2 teams with Wednesday, Friday off nights. That's going to be LA and Winnipeg. And then 3 teams with Friday, Sunday off nights, Anaheim, Chicago, and Winnipeg. So overall, this is a pretty solid streaming week. There's different options, lots of off nights, variability. It's nice to have at least 2 teams for all those Monday, Wednesday, Wednesday, Friday, Friday, Sunday options. So you've got at least 2 teams that you can choose from for all the year off nights on any given stretch during the week. So overall, I think this is a pretty solid streaming week, a good week to really optimize your lineups and not leave anybody on your bench on the heavy nights. So worst teams that we want to look at, basically the teams that we're probably thinking about dropping players from. So obviously we're going to start with the teams here that have just 2 games played. 2 games played, 0 off night teams this week upcoming are Tampa and Toronto. So with Tampa, you're looking at Anthony Cirelli. If you've been rostering Cirelli because of that power play deployment, the top power play deployment there, he does have 3 points in his last 3 games, skating over 20 minutes a night. That's been all right, but I do think that it's time to move on from Anthony Cirelli. And if you went and speculatively added Duclair based on the trade, then I think you're going to be disappointed because you should probably just drop him back. I don't think it's a player that you need to be hanging on to through a short week like this, or a light week like this, rather. Toronto, yeah, any of these guys, if you've got them, Bertuzzi, Domi, Nyes, you can definitely let those guys go. I don't think we need to say too much there. Edmonton, Nashville, Vancouver all have 2 games played this week. They all also have 1 off night, so a little bit better. It is all on the Wednesday, so it's not like any of these teams you can get the Monday off night and then drop. You do have to wait till Wednesday if you're going to keep any of them. So overall, if you are dropping, I'd just go ahead and drop at the beginning of the week, right away on Monday as you're making your ads for the week. So in Edmonton, I have had some questions coming through about Evander Kane, what to do with Kane. Overall, I'm still holding on Kane. 32nd in his last 5 games in shot attempts per 60. Still skating close to 17 minutes a night. Yeah, he's going to have some ups and downs, but with the Edmonton playoff schedule at stake here, the way he contributes with the hits and everything else, I think you got to hang on to Evander Kane. At least I would in my leagues. Matthias Ekholm, though, I do think that you can drop in Adam Henrique if you picked him up with the news that he was going to Edmonton. I do think that he is still just a streamer and he can be dropped and probably should be dropped if you need to stream hard this week and beat your opponent to get into your playoffs or secure your bye situation or something like that. I do think that both Ekholm and Henrique are droppable players there. Moving over to Nashville, you got Jeremy Lauzon, you got Gustav Nyquist, and you got Jason Zucker. So again, Zucker, if you picked him up, definitely a player I'd drop. Jeremy Lauzon, if you're into Bangers Cats, I would actually hang on to Jeremy Lauzon. I think he's, just elite at hits. So I think that's a player that I actually would hang on to. And it's really hard to move off Gus Nyquist with 10 points his last 5 games. Yeah, if he were to be moved off the top line or top power play or something, then sure, that would be a point at which I would then drop Gus Nyquist for this 2 game week. But unless we get some indication like that before the start of the games, then I would definitely be hanging on to Gus Nyquist. It's just too hard to drop a guy who's producing 2 points a game at the moment. And then in Vancouver, I have had some questions about should people be dropping Elias Lindholm. Personally, I'm still hanging on. The underlying metrics are brutal, and only 1 assist his last 5 games. I'm not sugarcoating that. But again, this is a situation where you've got a team that has a good playoff schedule. You've got a player with a long history of production, and you just figure that at some point it should all kind of come together a little bit. He should figure it out a little bit, and he should be able to put up some points for you in your fantasy playoffs. So that's a player I'm trying to hang on to. And we also have 9 teams with 3 games played and 0 off nights, so you can definitely look through and see which players from those teams could be sitting on your bench every night, all the heavy nights, and potentially move off of them as well. Those 9 teams: Dallas, Seattle, Arizona, Buffalo, Calgary, Florida, Minnesota, Montreal, and Philadelphia. All right, let's move along to the best teams to stream. We have a pretty unique setup. We've got the Rangers with a 5 game week. They only have 2 off nights. That's pretty much always how it goes. If there is a 5 game week, it pretty much follows this format where it's Monday, Tuesday back to back, then the Thursday, and then a Saturday, Sunday back to back. So that is the situation for the Rangers this week. You got Alexis Lafreniere, you've got Keandre Miller, you've got the newly acquired Jack Roslovic and Alex Wenberg. Left them for in here so we could talk about them as streamers. And then Capo Caco if you are in the deepest of leagues. So overall, I still think that Lafreniere is probably the top guy here, but I am a little bit interested in what they do with Jack Roslovic. Do they see him as a right winger to play alongside Zibanejad and Chris Kreider? If that's the case, then obviously that's great. A great situation for Roslovic. I'm actually rostering Roslovic in Kakupful right now, and then he was traded to the Rangers, and I'm going to be hanging on until I get some sort of idea of what they want to do with Roslovic. If he is going to be on the top line with Zibanejad and Kreider, that's going to be of interest to me. Keandre Miller, we've got Trouba out with an injury. Should have mentioned that one actually in the news and notes as well. He was announced out 2 to 3 weeks, I believe, was the time frame. So Keandre Miller probably going to get a little bit more run here, play some big minutes. So a little bit more interest in Keandre Miller than I would typically have. But overall, it's just he's kind of like Matt Roy, I feel like, from the LA Kings, maybe with a little bit more name brand value, plays in New York, That's kind of how I feel about Keandre Miller. So take that for what it's worth. Wenberg and Kako, I have pretty much no interest in, to be honest with you. I think Wenberg slots in on the third line, and Kako probably gets bumped down with the acquisitions in some way. And even honestly, if Kako didn't get bumped down, he's still on the line with Zibanejad and Kreider. He's got 0 points his last 5 games. He's not shooting a ton. He's just not doing anything of fantasy relevance. We also have a team this week in Winnipeg who has 4 games played and all 4 come on off nights. So a perfect schedule for Winnipeg. From Winnipeg, you can look at Sean Monahan. You can look at Gabe Vilardi if he is returning from injury for next week. Deeper down the lineup, you've got guys like Niederreiter, Perfetti, Iafallo, even Messikov if he miraculously hangs on to his current line 1 deployment. Overall, I think Monahan is definitely the guy you're looking at first here, just because we don't know the true status of Vilardi. I've been burned a few times by, picking up a guy with the expectation that he should be good to go for Monday, and then Monday rolls around and he's not good to go. Then Wednesday rolls around and somehow he's still not good to go. And so that's where I'm at. Unless we get, by the time you're actually making the ad, if you do get better information on Vilardi and it looks like he's going to, reclaim a top line, top power play role, then definitely you could have some interest in that. But for the time being, with what we know as of today, I would go with Sean Monahan as the top option there. Quentin Byfield, At the top of the list for the 4 games played, 3 off-night teams. Should have mentioned LA and St. Louis are the 2 teams there. Quentin Byfield absolutely head and shoulders above everybody else at the top of this list. He's been playing an unbelievable amount of minutes the last little bit, which is awesome to see. He's been above 20 minutes in each of the last 5 games. Had 22-45 in the last game against Ottawa. Goal, 3 shots, 4 hits. Interesting aspect that he's added to his game a little bit more as of late. So, loving what I'm seeing from Quentin Byfield. I think he is a terrific option for those 3 off nights. And those 3 off nights are the first 3 of the week, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then you can feel free to move off of Byfield after that if he's not fitting in on your Saturday, and maybe get a Sunday streamer. Just allows you a lot of optionality in your lineup as well to go with an LA streamer and Byfield in particular. People are probably going to pick up Pierre-Luc Dubois. I am not. Dubois' metrics are terrible. His deployment keeps going down. He's averaged 14 minutes and 45 seconds time on ice in the last 5 games. That's not good enough. It really does seem like he's already soured there in Los Angeles, and I'm pretty much just not interested. I would definitely take Philip Deneau over Pierre-Luc Dubois at this point. Deneau is just gonna skate 19 plus minutes, and he's gonna run into some points here and there for you. So I definitely take the note there. Matt Roy, the other option on defense, he's got 3 assists his last 5 games, skating over 22 minutes a night. He's going to provide you a little bit of everything, is Matt Roy, and so he's a solid option as a streamer for the week. From St. Louis, you got the 3 defensemen at the top. You got Justin Falk, who's dipped below 50% rostered. You got Colton Parayko. You got Torrey Krug. Of the 3, I am still interested in Krug the most. They've been running a true top power play, and Krug has been the defenseman on that, and he skated 24.5 minutes average time on ice the last 5 games. That's obviously a good mark as well. So overall, I'm looking at Krug as my top option as a defenseman from St. Louis at the moment. And then forward, you got Braden Shen, you've got Jake Neighbors. Neither of them are producing a whole lot, but we've just done this so many times with Braden Shen, I feel like. And he always seems to produce as a streamer for me. So maybe I'm just got a soft spot for him, and this is really not based on any tangible evidence that he's going to be decent, but I still would pick up Braden Shen if I needed those off nights. St. Louis plays Monday, Wednesday off nights, and then has a Saturday, Sunday back-to-back at the end of the week. So you could also view it as a Monday, Wednesday stream and then flip to a Friday, Sunday stream if you need to keep avoiding the heavy nights. There's some ways to play this, obviously, with the Blues there, but an interesting set of players there nonetheless. Then moving on to the teams with 4 games played and 2 off nights. There's 4 of them: Anaheim, New Jersey, New York Islanders, and the Washington Capitals. So from Anaheim, it's the usual suspects: Troy Terry, Mason McTavish. I mean, if Zegras returns, he's also in the mix for sure. And you've got Alex Killorn. Ryan Strome had a goal and an assist in the game tonight. So yay, Ryan Strome. I've actually streamed Strome, and I've advised someone else to stream Strome in some deeper spots. So yeah, I mean, there you go. Ryan Strome doing the thing, getting us some points. Love to see it. And then on defense, you got Cam Fowler, Pavel Minchikov. Minchikov's been getting a bunch more minutes lately, which is a little bit interesting for sure. So either of those guys could be of interest to you for your fantasy week. I mean, it's Anaheim, right? So take a healthy grain of salt when assessing what their fantasy production could be. I am a little bit more down on Terry than I have been, just obviously with the moves they're making. Yeah, maybe if Zegras comes back, that's a net positive, but overall, it's tough to be super excited about Anaheim at the moment. New Jersey, we've got Dawson Mercer, we've got Eric Holla, we've got Andre Palat. So I think that I'm not into Dawson Mercer. He's burned me a few times this year where I've tried to pick him up. He's playing on the third line currently with Curtis Lazar and Chris Tierney, so you can throw out any thought you possibly had of him scoring at 5v5. And then he's playing on the second power play with Holla, Palat, and Holtz. It's just not a great spot to be for fantasy production. Palat is playing on the Meyer-Heischer line, and Holla is playing on the Brat Hughes line at the moment. I am interested in either of those players. I don't know that I have a strong take between the two. Holla's underlying metrics are definitely better, but obviously Timo Meyer is the hottest player on the planet at the moment, so that's nice for Andre Palat. I guess I would lean Holla between the two if I had to choose. From the Islanders, you've pretty much all season you've just been looking at Anders Lee and Kyle Palmieri. The Islanders did an interesting thing, kind of loaded up a top line of Brock Nelson, Bo Horvat, and Matthew Barzal, which kind of killed everybody else's fantasy value. But it did also mean that Kyle Palmieri is the clear ad for me because he's the one that's still on the top power play. So that's how I would split the two there. Kyle Palmieri gets the edge with the power play one deployment. Moving over to Washington, we've got Tom Wilson, we've got Dylan Strome, we got Max Pacioretty. It'll be interesting for sure to see how all that shakes out. I do think that at least both Wilson and Strome should be on the top power play, and they've really kind of thrown things into the blender. Like in the last game, they played Ovechkin with Protas and Lapierre, so they're really trying all the different things at the moment there in Washington. Dylan Strome's still hot, so you could lean on that. His underlying metrics are not good. Same with Tom Wilson. Underlying metrics are not good. Max Pacioretty's underlying metrics are better than the other two, but he's also getting certifiably the worst deployment. So take all that for what it's worth. Strome would still be the top pick from that group, although I do think it's likely that the run that he's been on comes to an end and we start to see some negative regression in the next little bit here. From the teams with 4 games played and 1 off night, I'll just run through one player that I think is of interest from each one. There are 6 of these teams: Carolina, Columbus, Detroit, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, and San Jose. From Carolina, I do have some interest in Kuznetsov, depending on where he lands in that lineup, depending on where he lands in the power play scheme. So definitely keeping an eye on getting Kuznetsov and would have an eye on picking him up potentially. From Columbus, realistically, I'm just kind of interested in whoever replaces Jack Roslovic on the Boone Jenner Johnny Gaudreau line and on the top power play. Alex Nylander has been the hot player as of late. He's got 5 goals, 7 points his last 5 games, 35th in shots per 60, and 30th in on ice Corsi 4 per 60 over that 5-game stretch. So there's some decent numbers under the hood here as well. So Alex Nylander, definitely the guy that I have some interest in at the moment, and I'm hoping that he's the one who bumps up there to join Jenner and Gaudreau, and then it becomes a bit of a slam dunk that he would be the guy to pick up from Columbus. Over in Detroit, we've got David Perron as the guy. He's not skating a lot, but he is shooting when he is out there, 11th in shots per 60 in the last 5 games, and he has a 9-hit game out there in the last little bit, so he's doing that as well. I'm not excited about David Perron, but it's definitely an option. Moving over to Ottawa, Shane Pinto getting 18 plus minutes. The on ice metrics, the individual metrics, they all look great for Shane Pinto at the moment. And so I think he's a really strong streaming option if you've got all these heavy nights open for him. If you can keep him there, I would definitely rock with Shane Pinto. Over to Pittsburgh. So Brian Rust, if he's coming back and if he's available in your league, then that's a guy you should target. 49% rostered on Yahoo at the moment. Otherwise, it's just Rickard Rakell. Continues to be Rickard Rakell. 24th in shots per 60, 21st in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Last 5 games, skating 19 minutes a night. The points haven't been there, but the underlyings all say that the points will come. So I'm in on Rakell. San Jose, you can look at Fabian Zetterlund, who actually has 6 points his last 5 games, skating 20.5 minutes a night. 115th in shots per 60, which is respectable. The on-ice numbers obviously not so kind playing there in San Jose, but I think Zetterlund's a viable option for the week, especially in deeper leagues. And then lastly, we'll talk Chicago. They got 3 games played, but they do have 2 off nights. So if you need a player there, it would be Nick Foligno for me, who's been pretty much stapled to Connor Bedard for a good chunk of the season, at least the last part of the season here. Playing top power play, playing top line. and actually producing a little bit with it is Nick Foligno, having a minor resurgence in one of his graybeard years here. So love that for Nick Foligno, and definitely the player to go with there from Chicago. All right, so now let's get into the best players to stream. I'm going to rank the guys here. I did say Monahan over Velarde, and I had it the other way. So I've kind of the way that I've written it in the rankings here, if you can see on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, but I have Velarde here, and then in brackets I've got assuming health and line one, power play one. If you're making an ad before any of that becomes available, before we get lines and any of that data, then I guess, yeah, I would bump Velarde significantly down the list, just not knowing what might be the case with his health, just not knowing where he might slot into the lineup. So then Sean Monahan definitely moves up for me. I do think Monahan's not that far off Velarde, even if Velarde is healthy. So if you want to just be safe with it, and both are options for you, then I would go with Sean Monahan. Next, after that, I mentioned how much I like what I'm seeing from Quentin Byfield in terms of the time on ice and the production, shot production, hit production, good stuff coming from Quentin Byfield. So he's definitely up here. And then Braden Shen as the St. Louis representative here with the 3 off nights, so you can get him in for those. He gets up here at 4. And then moving down the list, again, we get Philip Deneau. Shen and Deneau, very similar to me. I feel like both are a pretty good bet to score a couple points for you on the week. And then moving down again, we have Dylan Strome. So getting obviously into the teams with 2 off nights rather. We got Dylan Strome, and you got Troy Terry. So those would be, yeah, just kind of the top end guys from those spots. Sorry, I had a cough there. Back to Winnipeg, I got Nino Niederreiter. Niederreiter does go hot from time to time, and so I'm willing to roster him in a week like this. I think he compares in 4 games to what you might expect out of Strome and Terry in 2 games, so that's where he sits. Then Mason McTavish coming in here, Tom Wilson, and then throwing in the honorable mention of Alexis Lafreniere. If you can get all 5 games out of Lafreniere, then obviously he would move way up this list. Because, yeah, getting 5 games is typically better than getting 4 games. So definitely, if that's your situation, if you got a bunch of off nights in your core group already in your lineup and you can fit Lafreniere in for 5 games, then he would move way up for me, probably right into the Byfield conversation. I'd probably still have him below Byfield, but it would be very, very close for me. All right, best for hits ranked. So obviously gonna lean heavily on Winnipeg here for the off nights. You got Brendan Dillon, you got Adam Lowry, you got Morgan Barron, you got Mason Appleton. All these guys hit. Dillon kind of the clear top tier guy there for sure. And then I did throw in Will Cooley from the Rangers. If you can get more of those 5 games, then Will Cooley is definitely interesting because he throws an absolute ton of hits. So definitely keep him in mind as well. Best for blocks ranked out. Dylan DeMello with the 4 off nights from Winnipeg. And then moving to the 3 off night teams, you got Colton Parayko, you got Matt Roy. Then rounding it out here, I got Nick Leddy, I've got Adam Lowry, I've got Brendan Dillon. And then from the Rangers, if you can get the 5 games, obviously Keandre Miller there, but also you got options like Braden Schneider, and Barclay Goodrow actually as a forward gets a good amount of blocks, so that's a good one to look at too if you need some blocks in a Bangers Cats and you need it from forward stream. All right, let's move it along. Let's talk about best players to add for the future. These are the players that you could add now and I think would potentially last in your lineup for the rest of the season. This list hasn't changed a whole lot. At the top, I've still got Quentin Byfield, and then a big tier, Troy Terry, Rickard Rakell, Dylan Strome, Shane Pinto, Nick Schmaltz. Velarde I've kind of moved down just because of the uncertainty there, especially with Toffoli now in the queue. And then you got some other guys that you could have some interest in. You got your Slafkovsky, you got your Sam Bennett, you got your Alexis Lafreniere. Sub 20% rostered. Tyson Forster still here from last week. He's gone a little bit quiet the last couple of games. He did kind of do this. He still had a goal in the one game where he kind of went quiet before. So he had a game where he skated 20 minutes, but he had 0 shots, and they followed that up with a 7-shot game and a 6-shot game, and he scored 2 goals in the 7-shot game. Then his most recent game against Florida, he played only 16:46, which is still respectable, just not the upper echelon deployment that he had been getting, and he only had 1 shot on goal. So, what do we make of this? I don't know, but I am watching closely to see what happens in the next game here against Tampa and see what his deployment might look like and if he can rebound and get a bunch more shots. Sub 10% rostered, especially with all these trades. I think there's actually a lot of interesting options now. So, Jason Zucker, as I mentioned, I have some interest in. Nick Foligno, I mentioned I have interest in just being attached to Bedard and getting a bunch of minutes there and having a minor resurgence. Anthony Duclair, if he can find chemistry with Stamkos, I think that's an interesting look. Jack Roslovic, if he can get on the line with Zibanejad and Kreider and build some chemistry there, that's a look. And then also Alex Nylander. If he can get on that top line now with Jenner and Gaudreau and keep some top power play things going, that could be a player that's worth rostering as well. So definitely the trade deadline has helped us out with some of these deep plays that we can look at. Long-term plays on defense. Got a few guys that are just barely creeping in under the 50% rostered mark that we look at here. Jake Sanderson, Seth Jones lead it off, 49% rostered each. I do have Bowen Byram skyrocketing up into this group here because of just one game with Buffalo. Trying to stay level-headed about it, but definitely interested in Byram. And he just has so much more potential than a lot of the other players that might be available at defense in your league. So that's why I'm kind of bullish on Byram now. I'd rather just take the shot and find out rather than, just stream in another guy who, hits and blocks a few for me and gets me a few points that way. Take the chance on somebody who might actually provide you a pretty decent amount of production. Justin Falk is below 50% rostered, so he fits in here. And then Torrey Krug also there, 29% rostered. Going sub 20% rostered for the defense, Pavel Mintyukov. I mentioned he's getting a lot of minutes as of late, and yeah, that's just going to be something I'm interested in for a young player who could kind of break out a little bit at any given point. Skating over 22 minutes a night. Only has 2 assists his last 5 games, had an assist in the game here tonight. So that's nice to see. But overall, I mean, you're below sub 20% now. You're going to have to take some swings to find a guy. So Mintyukov at least has that kind of untapped potential upside to him that we like to see. Sub 10% rostered, you got Adam Boqvist all the way down at 1% rostered. Has been playing on the top power play along with Zach Werenski. So that much at least has some interest. There's really not much else out there at defense below 10% rostered, so Boqvist is the guy. All right, moving over to goaltenders. I still got Urson at the top here, Sam Urson. I was actually looking at his game log. I don't think people who aren't currently rostering Sam Urson actually realize how good it's been for him. In his last 6 outings, he only has 1 game where he's allowed more than 2 goals. So that's pretty good. He allowed 5 goals on 21 shots to Washington, and I think that just stuck in everybody's mind, but everything around that has been pretty terrific from Sam Urson. He's going to get 2 of every 3 starts, I think, rest of the way, and I'm very interested in Sam Urson as a rest of season hold. Charlie Lindgren has been kind of bouncing back and forth between good starts and bad starts, but his last start was terrific, a 39 save shutout against Pittsburgh. Man, what do you do with that? I have to like that from Lindgren. And yeah, he's been getting into all the games recently. They keep going back to him. It does really seem like he's completely taken over as the starter in Washington. Philip Grubauer, I do have on the list, so it's kind of interesting what they've been doing. I thought that Grubauer would get the start in this game against Winnipeg, but they did go back to Decord even after using Decord in the second part of the back-to-back earlier in the week. And Decord had a solid game. It wasn't, they didn't win. I mean, it's hard to win when your team scores 0 goals, but Decor did only allow 2 goals on 31 shots, so it's a pretty solid outing for him overall. So I don't know what they're going to do next in Seattle, but for the moment, I still think they go back to Grubauer for the next game. If he plays well, they probably go back to him again. So yeah, I'll put Grubauer here for now, but it's still a very fluid situation in that net for sure. Sub 25% rostered. Again, because of the trade deadline, I think this opens up a bunch more starts for Sam Montembeault in Montreal. So in terms of a volume play, you can look that way. Krova Melka has been playing pretty well for Arizona after struggling basically the entire year. I was going to be ready to really tout Vimelka as a really strong candidate to be picking up right now, but then Connor Ingram went out and shut the door on the Detroit Red Wings. And whenever you get a shutout, I mean, it was a 28 save shutout, really strong performance for Ingram, kind of bouncing back in a big way after he hadn't had a great stretch. It's hard to say what they're going to do next. Ingram has been the guy all season pretty much, and for him to get a shutout like that, it kind of feels like they might go back to him. I'll be watching to see what they do against Chicago on Sunday for sure. Elvis Merzlikins, 21% rostered, another option. Jake Allen, 11% rostered, going to New Jersey, as I mentioned earlier. Definitely somebody that you should keep an eye on as well. All right, we need to talk about the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. And we are in the midst of an absolute barn burner at the moment, our Blake and I. So the season record is 10-9 for me now. And I picked my hometown player from the Leafs here, Tyler Bertuzzi, and he has not done a whole lot. He's got 7.25 couple points after 3 games played. He's got one more to go on the week. And Blake took Sam Bennett, and he has crushed to the tune of 7.5 per couple points after 3 games played with one to go. So not our strongest outing so far. Hopefully at least one of these guys absolutely goes off in the next game and makes it look a little better than it is so far. Yeah, not our best week in terms of picking these guys. So for next week, I pick first. I picked Quentin Byfield for the week. I did think about Blake's pick, which was Alexis Lafreniere. With the 5 games played, that's nice, but Byfield's minutes, I'll take the 4 games. I'll take the game, the less one game, I guess, from Byfield, just based on those minutes. He's getting top power play, all the minutes in the world. I do think that it could be a really big week for Quentin Byfield upcoming. All right. We're getting to the end here. If you've enjoyed this episode so far, I think you would also enjoy Mark Barber at 18 Skaters on Twitter. He posts daily summaries of what's happening in the NHL all over Twitter and also on the Apples and Genos website. So go to applesandgenos.com and you can check that out. I just think it's a terrific way to catch up on the previous night's games played if you weren't able to do so as they're happening. If you need some help with your fantasy team, you can check out the Apples and Geos Patreon. Got a couple different offerings for you there, including team reviews if you need those. I can help you out and get your team sorted for playoffs. If you have made it this far, I assume you enjoyed what you're listening to or watching on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, like and subscribe goes a long way to helping us out. If you're listening on a podcast provider, then yeah, whatever you can do there, 5-star rating would be awesome. All right, I think that's all we've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value. Helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying the music for this podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. And that's it, folks. Much love.